So it's been almost a month since Jurassic World Evolution released, and it's fair to say the reception has been a bit mixed. That's a topic of conversation for another day. However, the most impressive part of this game has clearly been the dinosaurs. The aesthetic and visual fidelity is pretty much unrivaled from any dinosaur game I've ever seen, and Frontier do have to be commended for their efforts on this part of the game. As a result, besides some quirky animations and maybe a flat AI, the dinosaurs have been well received, and with the Fallen Kingdom DLC dropping 6 new dinosaurs, the questions are arising on what's next for DLC additions. In this video, we will explore the possible dinosaurs that could be coming soon, the general scope of what the community want, and look at how Frontier could package these DLCs into concepts, and we'll discuss the price based on the Jurassic World Evolution release price. This is one of the highest requested DLCs, and it's easy to see why. Even for me, it's one of my utmost priorities. However, after playing the game for several hours, you can tell the engine is not quite adapted for allowing the player to create custom-sized lagoons or aquatic exhibits, especially with how small and varied the terrain is on some of the maps. And thus I concede it will be difficult and probably unlikely to see this DLC without sweeping changes to the game's core engine and mechanics. However, Frontier could add ploppable marine exhibits with built-in feeders and hatcheries and allow us to build viewing attractions along the edge. That could work. Alternatively, they could extend the building areas to encompass beaches and the coast and allow us to build into the ocean there with underwater fencing. This option could open up stuff like boats and rivers and all sort of water-related attractions. Honestly, there's too many workaround solutions to this problem, so if this DLC is coming in, I trust a worthy option is upheld. Anyway, let's talk about the species that could feature in this DLC. First of all, Mosasaurus. This titan of the Jurassic World universe rivals even the sauropods in size, reaching 25.9 meters, making it an ultra-sized version from its original fossil evidence. Thus, the size constraints of this animal makes the need for high volume and large surface area exhibits pretty necessary. I would assume it would be the largest marine reptile engine have ever cloned in the lore, and thus would be the absolute apex predator, and judging by carnivore behavior in this game, it would probably need a super expansive exhibit on its own. Due to its appearance in Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom, however, it will be one of the frontrunners for a place in this Envision DLC. Tylosaurus was pushed into the Jurassic Park lore via its appearance in the now accepted, canonized Jurassic Park the game. Thus, because of this, it has been added to Engine's list and would be another species in major contention to be added for this DLC. Paleontologically very similar to the Mosasaurus, Tylosaurus is however dramatically smaller than the betrayal of the Mosa, to about 12 meters in length. Very accurate to its real life size, but it would still be one of the top predators in the water. Plesiosaurus was due to be featured in Jurassic World in the aptly named Plesiosaur Pond, but was cut early during production. However, its holoscape remains in the Innovation Center, leading some to believe the creature may actually have been cloned by InGen or Mazarani, and thus has a strong leverage as a lore species. For me, Plesiosaurus should be a name with huge priority as it is one of the most widely known Mesozoic marine reptiles. Another famous name, however, hasn't yet been referenced in the Jurassic Park universe. Not sure about other people, but this is one of my highly anticipated names for a DLC of this category, as it is my favorite marine reptile. Its fame and status would be enough to bring it into heavy contention. Ichthyosaurus would fulfill the role of the smaller species that would appear in large groups, sort of like the Struthiomimus and Gallimimus on land. Ichthyosaurus would also bring a fresh body plan and aesthetic style unique from the relatively similar Plesiosaur, Pliosaur and Mosasaur varieties. So that's my 5 choices for theoretical marine DLC. I split them into 3 categories: small, which would probably feed on fish, mediums, which can feed on larger fish like tuna or turtles, and large, which would probably be only satisfied with sharks. Alternatively, the DLC could also add ammonites and orthocones as prehistoric food sources. Obviously, I left out some key names, but I think 5 is a sufficient starting number because I feel the game has to be adjusted heavily first to accommodate it. I specifically left out some of the pliosaurs like Leopleurodon and Kronosaurus, but they fill very similar roles to the mosasaurs. Regardless, I think this will be one of the priciest DLCs due to the sheer things it has to do and introduce to the game. I also don't think it will be paired with a flying DLC since that would be way too much content added and they could milk much more out of splitting them apart. I think a reasonable starting price would be $20 US, but will not be surprised if it reaches $30 US. Compared to the Marine DLC, I think the flying reptiles would be much easier to implement. A reason for this is that a large aviary dome could be placed anywhere. It could morph into the terrain without having to be flattened and essentially ignore the current building restrictions in the game engine. It would be nice if this and the Marine DLC were implemented. You could place the aviary over a marine exhibit and have a dual biome enclosure, since most flying and marine reptiles are piscivores anyway and would feed primarily on fish. It wouldn't be a Flying Reptiles DLC without the pterosaur itself, having been heavily intertwined in the novella and movie canon. It has also featured several variations through the movies, and this could be reflected in the different skin system that is already in the game. The smaller Rhamphorhynchid Dimorphodon acts as the smaller accompaniment to the larger Pteranodon, and has recently been propelled into a pivotal role in the movie series with Jurassic World. Geosternbergia made very brief cameos in the Lost World and is generally a very obscure name. However, because of this slight mention, I believe it's enough to warrant an inclusion, and Frontier do love adding obscure movie reference names, like the Achaeoniphomimus. It is very similar to the Pteranodon, and some studies believe it is simply another species of it, so something like a Nyctosaurus could theoretically be a better choice than this. Pterodactylus had a pivotal role in the original Jurassic Park novel, and is the final pterosaur with credible links to the Jurassic Park universe. Whether this be enough to warrant an inclusion, I'm not sure, as Frontier only seem to be prioritizing movie canon much more than novel or game canon. Likewise with the other pterosaurs mentioned, it is piscivorous and thus feeds mainly on fish. In the 1997 Lost World Jurassic Park game, Rhamphorhynchus is described to have lived in Habitat D of Isla Sorna, but this game isn't considered strong canon and thus this reference is on shaky ground. Another piscivorous smaller pterosaur, it is indeed similar in niche to the Dimorphodon, but would provide smaller size variety. So that's my 5 I believe to be added for a theoretical pterosaur DLC. Notably, I've left out all of the large category, the Azhdarchids, as I believe their size will be a problem trying to fit them into aviaries. The 12-meter wingspans of Quetzalcoatlus, however much I want them, may prove really difficult to house them, as these titans of the air generally require lots of open flying space and would look unnatural being placed in an oversized cage. There is clearly just not enough buildable space on the islands at the moment. The price for this theoretical DLC I believe would be smaller than the marine reptiles, as it is less ambitious and easier to implement, so $15 to $20 is a good price range. My friends, of course a video about possible Jurassic World Evolution dinosaurs has to have an honorable mention for its spiritual predecessor, Operation Genesis. It has to be said I had expected all of the dinosaurs from this game to be included at least, but now hype is ramping up for an Operation Genesis DLC that will bring back these cult classics. So here's my picks in no particular order. My favourite carnivore from Operation Genesis, a species that was interesting enough I believe to have warranted an inclusion from the start, and with the dig site list I was eagerly anticipating it. I think it will definitely be a frontrunner for DLC potential, if not for an Operation Genesis themed one, then definitely for a carnivore pack with some others. Acrocanthosaurus would add a large, unique carnivore to boost the variety of the current roster. The shark-toothed lizard was another carnivore favourite from Operation Genesis, and once again with the 2 North African dig sites I had hoped an inclusion in an evolution was also imminent. It is probably too similar to Giganotosaurus, so maybe it is much less likely than I have perceived it here. For me, Albertosaurus was a forgettable creature, but I feel like that's down to its representation in Operation Genesis as being obnoxious and uninteresting, so I had hoped Frontier would have given it more of a deserving, medium-sized, agile and lighter built Tyrannosaur feel, compared to the more robust Daspletosaurus or Tyrannosaurus itself. Alternatively, the closely related Gorgosaurus might be a better option on the roster. We are sorely missing some non-North American herbivore varieties, and Oranosaurus would add a lot of extra and welcome variety. Another species I'd expected since the Tagama beds was confirmed in the game, and is understandably a huge herbivore favourite for a lot of players from the old title. Homalocephalae or Prenocephalae, its disputed synonym, would be welcome additions for variety. They come from Asia and would bolster the roster there, adding pachycephalosaurs outside of North America. Hamalocephalae has a flat wedge-shaped skull, and if it was coloured as strikingly as it was in Operation Genesis, I don't see much overlap with the others, thus it would be a unique inclusion. So those are my 5 picks for theoretical Operation Genesis DLC. I left out notably Dryosaurus. I just think it doesn't bring enough to the table compared to the 5 listed here, as the Ornithomimids and Pachycephalosaurs in the game already fill its niche. This is probably the most likely DLC addition so far, and will no doubt be one of the Jurassic Park's fan favourites. I can envision this DLC going for around $5 US, but I would certainly not be paying anything more than $10 for it. A Legacy DLC has been heavily suggested by the community, alternatively called a 1993 DLC, which would bring back park assets such as building designs and dinosaur jeep skins from the first movie into the realm of Jurassic World Evolution. Although those would be all welcome features, we're here to speculate and discuss on the dinosaurs, and a Legacy DLC platform would give us some key lore dinosaurs that are speculated to be on Isla Nublar during and around the events of 1993, but have otherwise missed out. A handful of Herrerasaurus was created by InGen and believed to be present in 1993 during the film's timeline, however did not make any on-screen appearance. Their lore and appearances were further fleshed out in Jurassic Park the game, and it was honestly a good shout to make it in Jurassic World Evolution. Reaching up to 6 meters in length, it would definitely be one of the larger small carnivore varieties, possibly reaching into medium-sized carnivore territory. I think it represents a great middle ground to the smaller raptors and the larger Ceratosaurus or Metriacanthosaurus, not to mention introducing a Triassic animal to Jurassic World Evolution. Proceratosaurus was briefly seen in the storage chamber scene in the movie, and although it was not to be believed to have finished incubation during 1993, InGen had at least successfully created its embryo, even going as far as constructing a paddock for it. Thus, it presents another possible DLC addition with reasonably strong ties to the canon. The dinosaur itself, however, is very small, possibly too small, and could be ignored in the same way Compsognathus is. So it seems InGen has had a major fascination with small carnivores, as Stegosaurus continues this trend, and the species is not very dissimilar from Compsognathus. Thus, it is pretty forgettable. However, it is known to have been cloned by InGen and therefore increases its likelihood of an appearance purely on a basis of lore. However, I'm going to lump this as pretty much interchangeable with the more famous Compsognathus and Saururus, as they really don't offer anything different from one another. This was an Ankylosaur I had heavily anticipated to be in the game on release, and I was left disappointed. Confirmed by the Dinosaur Protection Group to have been on Isla Nublar, it makes it one of various species that was cloned by InGen but was not publicized. With a strong showing in the novel as well, Euoplocephalus is a big name to be left out from Jurassic World Evolution, and will no doubt be a favourite for a Legacy DLC inclusion. Also, another species mentioned in the novel, Hadrosaurus, is believed to have been another secretive InGen addition, and may also have been in Jurassic World due to its appearance on the Innovation Center holoscape. It is however much too similar to what we already have in Maiasaura and Muttaburrasaurus, and thus it is highly unlikely. The only differentiator would be a striking new color scheme to make it stand out, so maybe it will be considered, but otherwise it is a forgettable name that should not be prioritized. So these are my 5 dinosaurs that would make a great Jurassic Park Legacy DLC pack, featuring those dinosaurs that were speculated to be on Isla Nublar during 1993. I left out some names such as Ornitholestes, Ophnelia, Lesophosaurus and Microceratus because they are mostly too small, whilst the first 2 are more novel canon rather than movie canon. Again, I would not pay anything more than $10 for this pack, but if it came with some of those 1993 Jurassic Park assets and attractions such as a Jeep Safari, then I could stomach the price a bit easier. We know from Jurassic World Evolution's roster that most of the Jurassic World canon dinosaurs have been added, such as Suchomimus, Metriacanthosaurus and Apatosaurus. However, there was a whole host of names that were possibly produced by the later Masrani Global and may have lived on Isla Nublar during the events of 2015. As such, it would make a good conceptual topic to expand the roster to encompass some more obscure Jurassic World related dinosaurs. Unfortunately left out of the final roster, Pachyrhinosaurus, like Euoplocephalus, was confirmed on Isla Nublar by the Dinosaur Protection Group and was expected to be in the game upon release. Its story in the canon is a little more obscure, with many speculating it was a later addition by Masrani and not an original legacy dinosaur from InGen operations in 1993, due to having no earlier references in novels or film media. A Jurassic World expansion DLC is the perfect platform to introduce this highly requested dinosaur. There was some hope for this dinosaur as it comes from the Tender Guru formation already present in the game, and it was featured in the Jurassic World Holoscape. It would be a decent addition, as it is a slender, small to medium sized carnivore with a pretty unique body plan. Another dinosaur seen on the Jurassic World Holoscape, and thus a possibility of being produced by Masrani for the later park, Hoplitosaurus is otherwise very similar to Polycanthus, and would not offer much to differentiate besides a new name. Ankylosaurs are already perceived to be a bit oversaturated in the game, so this species will be hard to swallow for many, I believe. Nipponosaurus was also on the Holoscape, and it's a hadrosaur from Japan, and like Syntalsaurus could improve the Asian herbivore variety. It has a brief crest, not as elaborate as the other hadrosaurs, and I would compare it to similar looking to the Hypacrosaurus or Gryposaurus. I would welcome this addition personally. I think it's great for variety, as we haven't had many hadrosaurs with smaller, less dramatic head crests. Rugops DNA was used to create the Indominus Rex and is the last remaining species that was involved with the Indom genome yet to be added. Although it is unclear if it actually lived on Nublar, Frontier has already added all the others, so why not add this? As a small abelisaur from Africa, it has some overlap with Majungasaurus, but I still think it's a great variety and has some connection to the canon. So that's my 5 for this DLC pack. I actually think this DLC is pretty likely, all things considered. Many of the species in this pack were part of my predictions, even though they were in my unlikely tier. Likewise to the Legacy DLC, I really don't think a price more than $10 is warranted unless they give us some content like buildings and attractions such as the River Cruise, Aquatic Park, or Egg Spinner rides, which were part of the movie park. So here is where we start to branch heavily outside the lore and into wishlist territory. My reasoning for this DLC idea was that Jurassic Park Europe was actually planned by John Hammond to be in the Azores island chain in the Atlantic, and maybe its dinosaur choices reflected the European continent much more than the original Americanized roster of Jurassic Park and Jurassic World. Who knows, maybe with this DLC we can get an expansion into the lore whereby Jurassic World actually gets a chance to move into Europe, giving us extra islands to play with. Anyway, let's look at some potential species. Another unfortunate omission from the final roster, Iguanodon's reign in the fossil record makes it one of the most commonplace European herbivores of the early Cretaceous, and a right fit for a hypothesized Jurassic Park Europe. Torvosaurus was an apex Jurassic carnivore with lengths reaching 11 meters, making it even larger than the Allosaurus. It was found in Jurassic Morrison formations and the Portuguese Lourinhã formation, the home country of the Azores archipelago, and thus an interesting choice for a European DLC. Torvosaurus is also a big name among the dinosaur enthusiasts and will no doubt go down well with the crowd. This large European stegosaur variety is frequent in the fossil record and an obvious name for some more representation from this continent. However, it can also be interchanged with the Portuguese Miragaia, which is also an interesting prospect. This medium carnivore slot is a complete toss-up between these three names, as theoretically any of these relatively similar species could be considered. My personal priority would be Megalosaurus due to its famous name, but the Neovenator is also extensively studied. Plateosaurus should be the first prosauropod introduced as it is the most famous, and I believe a European themed DLC pack is a perfect place for it. It would be great for some decent Triassic representation and finally an overlooked dinosaur group. So what do you guys think about Jurassic World Europe? Am I being too ambitious, or does the community actually want something like this, allowing us to build parks in new environments and continents? Europe currently is very underrepresented in the game, only having the 2 English sites and a Portuguese site that is essentially a recopy of the Morrison formation. If they do add more islands, then that will probably rise the price to something like $10 to $15 US. Although in the original film canon, Jurassic Park San Diego was to feature only a handful of Isla Nublar dinosaurs, we can encompass species that are from North America that have been left out. With our in-game successes on the Los Cinco Muertos, plans for a new Jurassic World San Diego might revive and allow us to play there. Maybe we can build on the offshore channel islands of California, such as San Clemente or Santa Catalina Islands. Utahraptor would be a huge statement of intent from Frontier, as it pretty much is overlapped scientifically with the Velociraptor and Deinonychus representations in Jurassic World Evolution. A featherless Utahraptor may be hard to stomach for many, and Frontier will indeed have to put on their creative hats if they wish to see this dinosaur in their game. Maybe you guys can come up with a suitable solution for how the Utahraptor should be portrayed in Jurassic World Evolution. Another North American hadrosaur with immense clout due to its uniqueness and namesake for the Lambeosaurine group. It would add tremendous diversity to the roster. One of my favourite all-time herbivores that is yet to be represented in any dinosaur game. Although still not as large as the King Tyrannosaurus, it wouldn't be a North American DLC without some proper Tyrannosaurid expansion. Both of these dinosaurs are interchangeable as they are believed to have coexisted with one another. I'm very happy about the Ceratopsid variety in the current game, but some more Centrosaurines would be nice. I've tried to select the most diverse and unique Ceratopsid here, with the Eniosaurus having a curved forward pointing nose spike. Another sauropod variety would be great, especially since we haven't had one in all our previous DLCs. North and South America were dominated by the Diplodocids and the Titanosaurs respectively, so having more of each group would boost the game's variety. Nevertheless, Barosaurus could have exceeded 50 meters in some estimates, making it the largest dinosaur ever in existence, but current widely studied specimens put it at similar lengths with Diplodocus. Again, another theoretical DLC that could pay homage to the Jurassic Park canon by expanding to San Diego, one of various planned destinations after the expected major success of the original Jurassic Park. Similar pricing to the previous, maybe this DLC will allow us to build on the mainland. Not sure how that would work, but that finishes up my predictions and wish list for DLC. As you can see, I only covered the possible new park destinations for Jurassic World and some highly likely future additions, but I definitely left out many other DLC topics such as dinosaur regions and dinosaur groups. So that's where you guys come in. I'd love to see what you guys come up with for dinosaur DLC, and the best and most interesting ones will be made into a community DLC suggestions video at a later date. Some ideas can range from Gentle Giants DLC featuring more sauropods, or a fantasy Jurassic Park lore themed one such as Jurassic World China or something that can feature more Asian species. The choices and imagination are yours, so I'm keen to see what you guys come up with. I'm also keen on what your opinions on DLC prices should be for this game, keeping in mind the $55 US release price and what each of you are willing to pay for future support of this game. Obviously the cheaper the better, but we have to understand if it's genuine amount of good content, then a higher price tag is sometimes justified. So would you throw money at the screen if Frontier added a dinosaur you absolutely would want in the game, or if you had to consider the overall content of a particular DLC pack first? Thanks to my Patreon supporters and especially my Patreon emperors, Creed the Madman, for supporting my channel. If you guys like my content and would like to support me further, check out my Patreon with link in the description.